every single one of our major customers and minor customers all shut their doors overnight.
You need the right people in the right place at the right time. And sometimes you have the right people in the right place, but at the wrong time.
I've got to keep going forward. I've got to keep looking for revenue streams. I've got to keep looking for growth, keep looking at new ways of doing things.
But, what's the culture like at the business? What do we stand for, the values?
I've got to tick that box on my personal development program I don't really want to be here.
Scaling up a business isn't easy. If it were, we wouldn't have less than 4% of businesses scaling beyond 10 employees or around £1 million turnover level, and less than 1% beyond 50 employees. But the contribution that we make as owner-managers to our economies is immense and should never be underestimated. Yet it can be a tough gig for all of us at times, and only other business owners truly understand the challenges that we face. And through ScaleUp Radio, we aim to help make things a little easier. We interview guests who have been where you are now and may have faced some of the challenges that you are facing. And they offer their thoughts and advice on what has worked for them, as well as what didn't. And we've also combined many of the lessons from these interviews and also through working with hundreds of owner managers over the last 10 years or so into a practical scale-up handbook that we've called the Entrepreneurial Scale-Up System, or ESUS. And it's for owner managers like you and me as we navigate our own scale-up journey. And you can order a copy through your favourite online book retailer or by going to all the W's, esusgroup.co.uk, www.esusgroup.co.uk. On this week's episode of Scale Up Radio, I talk with Dr Lizzy Bernthal from Release Your Potential, or Dr Lizzy as she refers to herself. You might remember that Lizzy has been on before, back in April of 2020. And in that episode, we covered a lot of her back history, all of her military and nursing background. But we wanted to talk more about Release Your Potential this time around, whilst also touching on the fact that we've had global pandemic since we last spoke with Lizzy. And what's also really interesting to hear is how she's grown as a business and as a person in the last couple of years, going from someone who had a small number of clients on a face-to-face basis and very local, through to speaking to sometimes several countries at once with her online sessions. There's so much value in this episode, with Lizzy taking us through some of her own challenges, bring her experience to the conversation, as well as talking through the transition from simply being a business owner to a genuine thought leader. And amongst other things, we discuss the concept of really owning your story and not being frightened of including all of the great stuff that you've done before and building on the things that make you unique. And that enables us to maybe tailor our services and products accordingly. We also talk about the freedom that comes from taking a business online as much as possible, and the freedom for you as well as for your clients, but also that extended reach that Lizzy has managed to really achieve. And we talk about the power of sharing your own experiences and your own opinions on social platforms like LinkedIn to really create connections. And Lizzy's done really well at building those LinkedIn connections and reach through LinkedIn. Lizzy is such an engaging guest, and it was so good to hear how she's changed since we spoke to her last. And I know that you will get a lot out of this conversation. Welcome to another episode of Scale Up Radio. I'm here with Dr Lizzy Bernthal. So welcome from Release Your Potential. And this is second time around for us, isn't it, Lizzy?
Yeah.
So we were just discussing it, and it was April 2020. So right at the beginning of the first lockdown, essentially, that we had our first interview. So we'll put in the show notes the links back to that. And there's his background, very strong military and very strong nursing background, and all of that's covered in that previous episode. So Lizzy, what's changed in the last almost 2.5 years?
I mean, I think we're just discussing, weren't we? I think I just cannot imagine. It's such a different world. It's a completely different world right now. I think from a business perspective, I think I've been very blessed. I think like all of us, our businesses vanished overnight and we thought, oh my goodness, what do we do here? We know lockdown started on the 23rd of March. At that point, I thought, oh, well, I either just collapse or I just do what I can to help. So at that point, I thought, right, I'll work out how to do an Eventbrite. I'll work out, because everything, as I say, I hadn't done anything online at that point. I'll work out how to do a webinar. So I did my first webinar on the 8th of April, talking about overwhelmed to calm. And 2 people turned up, and it was fantastic, because I thought, I don't care how many people turn up. I just want to do whatever I can to add value.
Yeah.
And that, now it's extraordinary when you think now I do obviously now a mixture of face-to-face and online, and can easily have 8 countries on a webinar these days. And I think it's just opened the whole world up. There's no restrictions now. Maybe time, as what with Australia, it's sometimes a bit tricky on the time front. But other than that, we have no restrictions other than a time zone, if that is a restriction.
Yeah, I think that's brilliant. So, we've gone from, relatively small beginnings with face-to-face groups that you were running. Now you're running groups with people from 8 countries around the world. And talking with you just a minute ago, you've just had an article published in the Telegraph. You're in the Daily Mail. You're in Woman's Own. So, all sorts of things have really changed for you over the last couple of years, haven't they?
Yes, and I think it's all learning to own our story, learning to own what we can offer, and it's knowing the impact that we can make. And I think that's the biggest thing. I think if we all of us, and I know you're absolutely on this same journey as me, if we do everything with the intention of wanting to add value, then that's all we're there for, is to make a difference. And if we do that, I don't mind whether 3 people turn up, 500 people turn up. If I can make a difference just to 3 people, job done as far as I'm concerned. And I've had a whole variety from 50, 60, 70, 100 people turn up on a webinar to 3 or 4. And all of them are great in their own way, because you can either give more really one-to-one discussions with people, or you can do it more of a send and whatever. And I think the difference with coaching has dramatically changed as well. I think my coaching has improved, and I know I've gone much more down the therapy route than I did before. Far deeper coaching, far more powerful, far more. I'd call it gardening. I unpick those weeds from childhood.
Right.
That actually, can be the blueprint for the rest of our life unless we unpick them.
Okay, so the idea that they would be overshadowing, shading the real things we want to grow. Yeah. So yes, okay.
Yeah. So, for example, and I think that's the other thing, I've really honed down who I serve best. So, for example, a leader might come to me to say they're finding it frustrating because they find it difficult to speak up in a boardroom. And then we can track back to that day when they were 7 or 8, either, something as innocuous as when they were at school, put their hand up and a teacher said you got the answer wrong, and it shows up 30 years later in a boardroom. Or, I do have experience of coping, with supporting through awful things like, abuse and sexual abuse and that kind of stuff, where suddenly as a child, you make up that story. I can't trust others. I can't trust myself. I'm not good enough, because if I was good enough, that wouldn't have happened to me. And again, that becomes a blueprint where the rest of your life you start collecting evidence of why you're not good enough until, bingo, you have that awareness. Oh my goodness, it's that story I made up when I was 7, 8, 9 or 10. Wow, I can clear that now and get all of my life.
It's funny, isn't it, how things that happen at that sort of age just stick with us. You've just made me think of of something when I was probably a little bit older than that, but I was probably about 9. And I remember being made to stand up as an example for the rest of the class because I'd forgotten to bring my PE kit for a football game, and I'd asked my mother to go and collect, to bring it in for me during the day, and it was like, I was made this example of for having put my mother out because I'd forgotten to bring the stuff, and it's like, just as you say, it just stays with you. I don't think it's really affected me in any particular way, but I can imagine how something else might. But that's a very vivid memory that I've got.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Amazing. And when it's the memory, I know for fact when it's the right one, because I bet you can go straight back. You probably remember what you're wearing. You remember who was in the room. You remember the teacher. You can takes you straight back to that one event, and then it's unpicking that story to think, actually, it's never the story, it's the story you make up. So I talk a lot about the story beneath the story.
Okay.
Because that's where we set our blueprint, which we can then unpick. And that's why I call it gardening. Just pluck out those weeds and then your flowers will flourish.
Brilliant. So you said something a moment ago that I'd like to pick up on, because I know we've talked about this a little bit before, but about owning your own story. And as I say, I can see that you have come on leaps and bounds in terms of your business and your confidence in what you're doing since when I first met you, which was before 2020 anyway. But yeah, what do you mean by owning our own story?
Yes, I think it's owning what we've achieved and what we've done and who we are. So, for example, I think with my story, I spent 25 years in the army. I worked in 18 different countries, went to all sorts of very dodgy places, including Afghanistan, seen all sorts of extraordinary things, coups, avalanches, heaven knows what. And just using that as an example, it was just what I did. I'd never kind of acknowledged that maybe that's not what everybody does.
Yes, yeah.
So I think it's a mixture of all sorts of things that we do in our life. We just accept that's what we did, or that's what we do, rather than saying, actually, how can my experience benefit others by showing them that we have, resilience and confidence is my specialty, as you know. So how can we acknowledge that we have more resilience within us than we could ever imagine? We can deal with the most extreme circumstances that we never thought we could deal with, and we can excel in them. And I think when we talk about owning my story, I think it was just after we last spoke, actually. So it was May 2020, when, of course, at the time, the care homes were getting the brunt of all the bad publicity. They weren't given the PPE. They were having to navigate enormous situations, with 20 residents dying in a day and all sorts of horrendous stuff that they just had not anticipated. So I was invited. It was a huge privilege to be invited to a care home trust to coach the executive teams and the nurses and the carers to navigate what they were going through. And I think at that point, that was when I started to own my story, because I realized that COVID is just like another deployment. It's the same emotions. You don't know where the enemy is. You don't know when you're going to be hit. Every single person's affected by it. And it was very much those peaks. Oh, my goodness, it's a sunny day. I'm sitting in the garden. It's a Tuesday. How bliss is this? Oh, my goodness, I haven't got a business and I've no idea what's going to happen. And we might die when we go to the supermarket, and all sorts of those emotions. So I suddenly acknowledged that the experience I'd had in my military life could really help others. And that's why I started doing a lot of workshops on overwhelmed to calm, how to stay in control, all that kind of stuff. And I think it also helped me identify the power of coaching, that I was helping nurses particularly who couldn't sleep because they felt responsible for killing all these people, to say, wow, after an hour's conversation, I can sleep again at night. I'm really proud of what we've achieved. So I suppose that's what I mean by owning my story, that all my background, whether it was nursing, health, research, that I'd experienced could be really used to give value to others and help them acknowledge that they have everything within them already. We are all whole and complete. Nothing's broken. Nothing needs to be fixed. It's purely the conversations in our heads that make us feel broken. And that's just a story we've made up.
Brilliant. So you really owned your own story, which then helped you very much in your positioning. If we look at it from a sort of almost a business, we're talking about it from a business perspective, how you position, how you communicate what it is that you're about, who you are, and therefore that value proposition became really, really clear. Is that right?
Yes, and I think I really reflected on my past and what I'd done and what I'd found difficult, what I'd found challenging, and what I overcame. And I did acknowledge the fact that yes, I had experienced a lot of toxicity in my career. But I also acknowledged I was absolutely, I was a victim. I didn't even realize I was a victim. And no wonder I attracted it, because I was that victim that was ripe for it. And I think that was a massive awareness for me, because I acknowledged that actually I was on a mission. I think it just what a mission I'm on, to get rid of toxicity in the workplace, because it can destroy lives. And that was a massive turning point for me.
Right.
Probably my marketing, because suddenly my business just shot up. Suddenly when I started talking about toxicity and how we've got to get rid of it, and that is my mission, to get rid of toxicity in the workplace, I just found people coming to me and just saying, oh my God, I've got a toxic boss, I've got a tricky boss, oh, I don't know how to do blah, blah. And all this stuff started happening. It was, wow, this is a really big problem that we need to resolve.
Yeah, absolutely. So real, giving that real clarity and something that's resonating with people. And take me through some of the things that you learned then, because you, like a number of us, had to transition your business, as you said already, at the beginning of lockdown, and you went largely online now and to doing a lot of things via webinars and online. What sort of things did you learn in transitioning your business in that way?
I think I learned that actually it gives us a massive freedom. The fact that, as I say, there's no limit to where I have no idea. Obviously, I do know where my clients come from because I find out. But it actually is irrelevant where anybody comes from now. So in that respect, I think Zoom is a great opportunity to coach. I think I love coaching on Zoom now. I think it actually provides a whole different dimension. I've only got one client at the moment who really wants to see me face to face. The rest are very happy on Zoom. Mm-hmm. I think from a client perspective, it's really much easier to feel that real sense of safety, which is so important, because they can be sitting on their sofa in their pajamas with a glass of wine if they want to. They tend not to come with a glass of wine, but I think you haven't got that stress about getting somewhere and what if I'm late, I get stuck in traffic. So I think in that respect, I think also you can speak to many more people in a day because you're not traveling.
Yeah.
I think on the opposite side of that, I think this is where boundaries are absolutely key. To start with, I want to help as many, and I still want to help as many as I can. But I just realised that my self-care was getting lost a little bit because I was going from call to call to call to call to call. I think about second week in lockdown, I spent 14 hours on Zoom, just literally back to back, wanting to support as many people I could. And I thought, hang on a minute, that's a bit excessive. I need to give myself a little bit space between each session, simply because I can then be more powerful, and support my client better than just going back to back to back to back. Yeah. So I think we all learned a lot about boundaries because it was so easy. We didn't have that travel time, although it was lovely not having the travel time. The travel time gives you a bit of space of reflection and thinking and listening to a podcast or radio, whatever you want to do between clients, whereas suddenly you find you have to create that space.
Yeah, absolutely agree with that. And very similar in terms of how I found things working with our business as well. It's very easy to just get sucked into it, and it's all about one thing straight after the other. And you have to manufacture.
Realize you haven't had any lunch, and it's 4:00 in the afternoon.
Yeah. Exactly. Yes, and you've just sat still at your desk or whatever for several hours in a row. So you've also been really successful at positioning yourself as a thought leader and getting people to your webinars, as well as getting yourself in the press, haven't you? So I'm sure there'll be a lot of people listening when they start to maybe look you up a little bit and they find where you've managed to raise your profile. How you managed to do that, because you're not somebody that's, I don't know, famous in some way and in the public eye, and you've built off it that way. You've built it up from in a very genuine and organic way from who you are. So how have you managed to do that and get yourself in that sort of position?
Well, thank you. I've never, ever thought myself as a thought leader. So that's amazing. So thank you for that. I think it's always having that philosophy of adding value. I think LinkedIn for me has been fantastic. I post Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I think that's been a real discipline for me to make sure I post every day, because it's funny if I don't post. I was away a couple of weeks ago and somebody sent me a message and said, "Are you okay? You haven't posted. Are you all right?" And I thought, oh, that's so sweet. I wasn't even aware you were even reading my posts. So I think it's, long as it's going with the value of, I want to add as much value as I can. And then you never know who's watching. You never know who's following you. I mean, obviously you see the likes and the comments and that kind of thing, and how many shares you get and all that. That's the sort of organic side of it. But you never know. I mean, I was really very lucky enough to attend the Trooping the Colour, which is a phenomenal year to be attending. And I was standing by the loo and somebody came up, Lizzy, I love your content. I thought, I have no idea who you are. And but thank you very much. And so I think I always relate it a bit to Joe Wicks. Joe Wicks used to turn up in a field somewhere, and sometimes one person turned up and another person turned up. And then he had the idea, right, I want to help these children who are homeschooling. I'll just do a Zoom call, see if anybody turns up for an exercise class. Yeah. And it just became a global phenomenon. Yeah. So purely, he just wanted to help and just wanted to offer. He didn't care whether 2 people turned up or 20 million turned up. Mm. So I think if we can do it from a genuine place of wanting to make a difference, then that's the key. That's the key.
So talk us through then how you've managed to make LinkedIn work for you, because I think that, again, there'll be a lot of people out there that do use LinkedIn and they maybe post even more frequently than you, but they're not getting the traction that you've managed to. And I know you have a unique style to your LinkedIn posts as well. But talk us through how what's made it work for you when lots of us out there are trying to make LinkedIn work and perhaps not succeeding very well.
I think maybe that's the thing. It's trying to make it work. I've never. I just think, well, and I suppose can be quite vulnerable, because I work on the basis, if I'm dealing with this stuff, I'm sure there's lots of other people dealing with this stuff. So I just share kind of a tip, or I share a thought, or anybody else feel like this. And it can be, while it's all related to confidence and resilience, it can be something that's nothing. I mean, I think my most, not that I say likes or anything make any difference. I just after James Bond came out, it was November last year, and it was just when we were going back to the cinema, but it was that whole kind of like, oh, I don't know if I'll feel comfortable in a packed room, or do I wear a mask? Do I not wear a mask? Yeah. And my husband and I, we went to see James Bond, and the cinema was packed. And I just felt, I was really shocked, because I love being with people. I felt really shocked how anxious I felt. And the person sitting next to me, I had no idea they were leaning all over my chair. And I know it sounds really silly, but at the time I felt, I don't know if I feel comfortable doing it.
I know exactly what you mean. I'm sure there are lots of people listeling that and feel that way.
So I just wrote a post and I said, went to James Bond at the weekend. I was surprised how uncomfortable I felt. Anybody else feel like this? And I just did a poll, and it said something like, yeah, thank goodness we're back to normal, or, oh no, far too early yet, or no, I wouldn't go anywhere. 55,000 views and comments.
Wow.
And it just took off.
Wow.
So that was just an example of me just sharing how I felt. Anybody else feel like that?
Yeah. So do you have different, that's incredible. Do you have different styles of LinkedIn posts that you put out? Because the ones that I see, you've got this very nice style. It's almost like, well, it's like a poem. It is a poem, isn't it, basically?
Well, it's not. It's interesting you say that, because lots of people go, oh, I love your poems. I thought, I don't write poems. Literally, the way it's just become my style, as you say, to write like short lines.
Yeah.
The only reason I did that was because obviously at the beginning of lockdown, where suddenly LinkedIn, I'm not saying it already taken off, but I think suddenly it was a way to communicate with people because you weren't meeting people. So it was the way to share. I just thought, oh, I found some of these posts really heavy going, loads and loads and loads and loads of text.
Yeah.
I was thinking, oh, that just feels a bit, got to get through this. So I thought, right, what if I just do short little lines? Is that easier to read? And it just seemed to, I really like how it's actually good. And it just carried on like that.
Yeah, it is. It's great, and I have to say, maybe it's similar to people that write novels and write short chapters, and there's always you can't put it down because you could do, but each time you get to the end of a little chapter, there's a bit of a hook that you want to see what happens next. So you've just find yourself flicking over and over, and it's a little bit the same with your posts, I think, in that because there's just something about each line, the way you write it, that just makes you want to. What's the next bit? What's the next one? What's the next
interesting because I wasn't even aware you were seeing my post either. You see, so
well, there you go. Yeah. Well, and that's part of the thing, is that you don't, and I don't engage very much with posts, but so you wouldn't know. But yes, they're out there, and I'm seeing them, and they're creating an impression on me. And I'm sure to lots of other people.
And I think just from a tip that I do is I always start with a question, and I always finish with a question, but it's the same question. So it just gives a bit of a hook. I don't do it for a hook, but I think I love making people think, and basically I work on the basis that if I'm thinking, then other people might be thinking. For example, and I love metaphors, so I think that's probably why I use a lot of metaphors, as you've probably seen. So, for example, I was in London over the weekend doing a really fantastic course, and of course, it was the train strike, the tube strike. We were told, don't ever travel because it's only travel in emergency. And I thought, right, well, I'm going to get to this course somehow, and I guess that's part of my resilience. But I just said, I'm going to get there, no question. I'm not going to listen to the media hype. I'm just going to do it. And got on a train, seamless, no problem on Thursday. And then with the tube strike on Friday, the tubes are literally all closed, literally gates. And I thought, wow, this is a real metaphor for life. So I did a post yesterday with a picture of the tube closed.
I saw it.
Yeah, did you? But just saying, how do you react with an obstruction? Do you use it as an excuse to jump higher, or do you just, I'm not going to do it?
Yeah.
And what was really interesting about the course, because it was all about, finding your super genius and that sort of stuff, which I help my clients do. So it was really relevant to me, and I learned loads myself to hand over to my clients as well. But I think what was interesting, I said to him, it's interesting that you didn't let us know there was a tube strike. And he said, and I said, I think that was an elective decision, wasn't it? And he said, absolutely, because he said, I know that the people that will come are the right people to come in the room, because they're not the people that will allow an obstruction to stop them. And those that decided it was all too difficult, we weren't going to come because there was a tube strike, train strike, blah, 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 they weren't the right people to come into the room.
Interesting.
Which was really interesting.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. All right. So are there any other things that you do to really increase that engagement and the sharing and that general reach? Yeah.
So I think, I'm always very humbled when people write comments and things. I always reply to every single comment, and every single comment I reply to, I always want to add more value. So I won't just say thanks for your comment. I will add something to build on the comment that they've made. So all my comments are almost like little mini posts in itself of adding value. And So yeah, that's one thing. And then of course, if I get somebody that's not connected with me before, then I will send them a polite, I'd love to connect if you'd be interested in doing so. And then we can start a conversation. And then if I feel it's appropriate, I offer them whether they want to come to my webinar. And then if they come to my webinar, then I offer them a free discovery call afterwards. And then of course we take it from there. So that's sort of a good system, really.
So you're very gently and not too early and too quickly bringing in, if it would be useful, it'd be valuable to you, why don't you come to my webinar, sort of thing, rather than very early on saying, here's a webinar, who'd like to come?
Yes, and I think I'm always conscious of offering. In fact, I did a real rant. I never normally rant I never normally rant on social media because I can't bear it. However, I did do actually today, ironically, I did a bit of a rant. No, it wasn't a rant, it was a positive rant, because I'm getting, I know so many of us are getting really frustrated that on LinkedIn, there seems to be a change in people just direct messaging with their selling before they've even said, how do you do?
Yeah.
Anyway, I had a hilarious one on Friday, which I had to share, where somebody was doing this. They just completely, not even an invite to connect, just somehow just found my email because it's on my LinkedIn, messaged me. You've got to buy this, no time to waste. And he said, I only work with people like you who are millennials. I thought it was hilarious. So I replied back, thanks so much. I'm so glad you looked at my photograph and that you feel that at 60, I really look 20. And I just thought that was an absolute classic where clearly he had no idea who he was messaging, no idea who they were, what they did or anything, just like copy, paste, copy, paste, copy, paste, copy, paste. Yeah. And I thought that is no way to build a business. And they go further, don't they? Because you then start to get the messages which essentially are saying, "Did you get my last email?" How rude! You've not replied, and you haven't bought anything yet. Yeah. All right. So masterclass on how not to. Well, in fact, I'm doing one on Thursday. Actually, I'm doing how to serve, not sell, to build your business with resilience and confidence. Brilliant. Very good. All right. And so, I mean, there are many of us, me included, that maybe look for shortcuts on LinkedIn, and it sounds like you're very much advocating against that. How much time do you spend on LinkedIn in a week? Yeah, actually, I probably spend an hour every day. Okay. Yeah, an hour every day. Sometimes a bit longer. I think it depends on how much engagement my post gets, because if it gets a lot of engagement, obviously, clearly, I spend longer because I'm responding to all the comments and connecting and so forth. So it varies, but that's, I would say, probably roughly. And I think that's a key thing and a key takeaway, isn't it? Is really, if you can't take shortcuts. If you really want to do it proper and you want to build up relationships on LinkedIn, you've got to give it the time, and you've got to do it properly with, as you said, value at the heart of it. Yeah, absolutely. And it's always adding value. It's always, what can I share? What tips can I give? And I think I know there's a balance of what you give for free and what people pay for, but I've always been really passionate about giving a lot of value for free because I want to serve as many people as I can, but also we all know that builds up trust. And I think what's really lovely is so many clients and those I work with, they all say, I know you're the real deal. I will share where things have gone wrong. I will share when, oh my goodness, I made this mistake. I will share stuff because I think, the courage to be vulnerable. I think it's a really powerful thing to, I think as a lead, you have to be vulnerable. Yeah, absolutely. Very good. Okay, so LinkedIn wise, we've had a good discussion around that. You've
as I mentioned earlier, you've also managed to be picked up and have articles written in things like the Telegraph and the Mail and Women's Own. So how did they come about? How did you manage to do that?
I think, again, I was interested. I was in a Facebook group, and I think I was just sharing what I did. And I think it was interesting because I was 60 in January, and it was a really quite defining moment for me, because in some respects, oh my goodness, I should be so further than I am right now in my business. And I thought, actually, no, let's just switch that and think, wow, yes, I feel I'm just getting started.
Mm-hmm.
So I just started sort of posting about age is not a number. Age is purely, it's just a number. So, and I generally really feel I'm just getting started. Everything I've done up till now brought me to this point.
Yeah.
And so I suppose I've been sharing that, and it seems to have, I don't know, caught interest, the fact that at 60, I feel I'm only just getting started.
And this was the focus of the article in the Telegraph just the other week. Is that right?
Yeah, it was a really, and I think what's been so lovely, and in fact, it's interesting because I'm not very good at always sharing my stuff, so because I don't want it to be about me. So I've got somebody helping with my marketing. So no, you've got to share it with everyone. You've got to share it. So I did a LinkedIn post about it, and I think it was wow. And I think because it obviously talked about my story, and lots of people said, I didn't know about your story, because you just see the post, you don't necessarily see the story.
Mm.
And the other thing I did a while ago, which I've never been rank conscious, and I never really shared my rank. And somebody said, you've got to share your rank.
As in military rank, do you mean?
Yeah, so my military rank. And I thought, well, it's all in the past, it's not relevant. And I shared my rank, and I got so many comments from women saying, oh my God, you're showing me what's possible. You're in a male-dominated society environment, and you've done this, this, and this. And I thought, actually, how selfish was I not to share it, because I didn't want to be seen to make a thing about it, when actually often the story we've got is our goal to help other people and share with us what's possible. So I think that was part of the whole thing about beginning to own my story, that this isn't about me. I was making it about me, the fact I didn't want to share it because I didn't want it to be about me. But the irony of all is, if you share it, it becomes about, showing others what's possible.
Yeah, and it goes back to what you said at the beginning of owning our own story, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Good. If you're just getting started at 60, then what's coming up? Yeah.
Well, I think before, when I was in the army, I was traveling around the world speaking on women empowerment and, in a military environment. And I'm really excited. I just want to get on the world stage again. And I'm writing my book, and I know you've just written your amazing book. So I just want to get out the message as far and wide as possible that we're all awesome. We have everything within us. Nothing's broken. Nothing needs to be fixed. And as bigger platforms as possible. And so, I've got my vision to be speaking around the world in big arenas and handing the message over that, yes, we can do it. Yes, we've got it all. Never put yourself down because you have it all already.
Brilliant. So somebody listening is going, you know what, I think I'd like to have Lizzy on stage then at my big event. How do they get hold of you?
Obviously on LinkedIn.
Funny that, yeah.
Luckily, my name is quite rare, so Lizzy Bernthal. So I'm the only one. So you can find me on there, and on my website, my business is Release Your Potential. So so my website. Although it's slightly frustrating because Release Your Potential, when I registered it with Companies House, it had to be the words all together without any gap.
Right.
Because there was another Release Your Potential. And the release your potential, of the gaps between release your and your potential has gone out of business, which does politely concern me, because you could Google release your potential with the gaps and it says no longer exists.
Oh no, right, okay.
But anyway, if you find my name and you'll find my business.
And you very much haven't gone out of business.
I have, definitely. I'm on the ascendant, hopefully.
Absolutely. All right. Well, and I think we can. The last time around, I asked you the sort of questions that I would normally ask, including, any particular books that you'd recommend. But maybe there's actually on that. I mean, maybe is there anything you've read in the last couple of years that you would add to that list? Do you think?
Well, I mean, I'm reading all the time. I've got hundreds of books, so I think there's 2 books that I'm reading at the moment which are really fascinating. One is Profit First, which I'm sure you know really well. Yeah,
Mike
really
Michalowicz.
Well. Yes, exactly. And actually, talking about putting yourself out there, I was just thought this book's amazing, and I thought I'll just email him, thinking he'll never reply. Anyway, he emailed me back straight away and said thanks very much.
Wow, brilliant!
So we're connecting now, so that's amazing.
It is amazing.
So you never know. You never know. And the other book I'm reading is Untamed by Glennon Doyle, which is, and I'm sure you know that book as well.
Not so well though.
It's a fascinating book. It's about a thought leader who was married with 3 children, and then she suddenly realized her sexuality and fell in love with a woman. But it's all to do with she realized she'd been in a box all her life. Right. She'd been doing what was seen to be doing, go to school, go to university, get married, have children, do a nice career, etc., etc., etc. And it's an incredible book. I mean, the first chapter, I thought, oh my God, this is just a bit scary because it's all a bit real. And it's all about how other people put us in a box. And actually, we need to not even, there is no box. There is no box.
Yeah.
So it was a very powerful read to me, probably from my experience, having obviously spent a long time in the military, and as you well know, that hierarchical organisation has a lot of boxes.
Yes.
At every level, there's a box.
Yes.
So it was fascinating and I think that's probably, where I started to own my story. I realised that it was my story, not other people's story that I was living because I had to conform with what they wanted me to be. I think that was probably the belonging. You can only belong to yourself. Fitting in is the absolute opposite of belonging because you become that chameleon. And I spent a lot of my life being a chameleon.
Brilliant. Lizzy, thoroughly enjoyed our conversation. As always, you find an incredibly inspiring person, and a real delight to have you on.
I'm so grateful to you because you've just been such a wonderful advocate for me. I'm so grateful. Thank you.
Well, no, pleasure's all mine, and I certainly look forward to seeing you on that big stage again. Global stage. I'm sure that will happen. Knowing you as I do, if that's what you want to achieve, I'm sure you will achieve it. So,
thank you so much.
Love to have you on. Thank you very much for being on ScaleUp Radio today.
Take care. Thank you.
Don't forget to take a look at www.bizsmarts.co.uk to access a great range of resources to help you in your scale-up journey. So that's bizsmarts.co.uk, which is bizsmarts.co.uk.
This has been a Monkey Pants Productions podcast.